The Ultimate Spider-Man video game is just about to celebrate its 20th anniversary, so I thought what better time than now to play this for the first ever time. So today I wanted to share my thoughts, my experience, and an overall review of Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2. So let's get into the game. The home console version of Ultimate Spider-Man, so that's for GameCube, Xbox, PS2, as well as the PC version, was developed by Treyarch, a company now mostly known for Call of Duty. The game would release across September and October of 2005. So, as the name would suggest, Ultimate Spider-Man is of course based off of the comics of the same name. So, this game actually picks up right after the Venom storyline in those comic books, but don't worry, you don't have to read them to play this because there's a recap at the start anyway. So once you get the recap fight with Venom out the way at the beginning of the game, we now skip forward to present day, where Spider-Man believes that Venom is now dead. Which isn't the case if that wasn't obvious already. So I'll be honest, whilst this is an Ultimate Spider-Man game, the story is primarily driven forwards by Venom, because Venom is the character out and about doing things, whereas Spider-Man just kind of has stuff happen to him. He gets caught in a fight with Rhino, he gets caught in a fight with Silver Sable, he gets caught in a fight with the Green Goblin, so on and so forth. Whereas Venom is the reason that Spidey gets caught up with Silver Sable, and he's also the reason, inadvertently, that he gets caught up in the fight with Green Goblin. But to summarise, a man named Trask wants to capture Venom so he can successfully recreate the symbiote for himself, but Trask also knows a lot about what happened to Peter Parker's parents. So Peter needs Trask alive to get that information, but Venom obviously wants him dead for revenge. And that's pretty much as simple as I can make this story for you guys. It's a very interesting story with a very strong comic book feel to it that does feel like a direct continuation of the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And of course, with that comic book feel comes tons of characters and cameos. So most of Spider-Man's villains show up in this game at one point or another, but there's also some cool cameos from other characters such as Wolverine and the Human Torch. Well, the Human Torch you can actually race in several different events, but I'd still class it as a cameo. But in terms of Spider-Man villains, you have Rhino, Silver Sable, Beetle, Green Goblin, as well as Electro, Carnage, and obviously Venom. So with the basics of the story covered, let's talk about our two playable characters, because yes, that's right, not only can you play as Spider-Man, you can also play as Venom. Which means you get both perspectives of the story, which is fantastically done. So first off, let's talk about Spider-Man himself. So if you played Treyarch's previous Spider-Man title, the Spider-Man 2 movie tie-in game, then he handles pretty much the same here as he does in that game. You can punch with the square button, kick with the triangle button, and then jump as well as dodge with the X button. You move around with the left analog stick, and you can turn the camera with the right analog stick, and you can use it to lock onto bosses just by clicking the right analog stick in. Web swinging is started with the right trigger, and you can give yourself a speed boost using the square button, and you can web zip pulling both triggers. You can also wall climb with the circle button. Whilst the web swinging isn't obviously as perfect as it would go on to be in the PlayStation 5 Spider-Man games, it's still pretty good here. It has the occasional moment of jank, but for the most part web swinging does feel pretty smooth and fluid. So now let's discuss the controls for our cutesy little friend Venom. So the sections where you play as Venom are completely different to when you play as Spider-Man. Venom is a lot tankier, he obviously can't web swing, and to restore his health you can drain people. Well, basically eat people. There's no limitations of who Venom can eat either, so eat to your heart's content, I guess. Anyway, so Venom has a short range attack with the square button and a longer range attack with the triangle button. Again, you jump with X and you can wall climb with circle. Instead of web swinging, Venom can jump very high and very far by pressing that right hand trigger. You can also kind of do a web zip, except it's with his tendrils instead. Swapping between the two characters and these gameplay styles throughout the story does keep the overall core gameplay quite fresh. Although personally I will always prefer to play as Spider-Man because the web swinging does give you a bit more freedom in terms of your movement options. Now before we go any further, if you're a fan of Spider-Man games or licensed tie-in games in general, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell for notifications of my future uploads. Let's get on with the video. So the game features an open world with various activities for you to complete, and you will actually need to complete a certain amount of these to be able to progress the story, which personally I think is a bit of a cop-out to just try and drag the game on a little bit, which is also already quite short. So what are these activities? Well, they pretty much boil down to three things: races, combat tours, and city events. So first of all, a race is just Spider-Man racing against the clock to swing through various checkpoints to get the highest possible time. There are bronze, silver, and gold medals depending on how fast you complete each race, but as far as I could tell, you didn't actually need to get a medal in order for it to count towards your progress towards the next story mission. You just needed to finish the race. These races are fine, but they do sometimes highlight the jankiness with the web swinging and overall platforming in the game. Next up, we have combat tours, which are pretty much exactly as they sound. You start off and fight a gang in one location and just go from one location to the next fighting the same gang. It's not that exciting, there's no time limit to it, you just go from checkpoint to checkpoint, beat up a few guys and do the same thing like 4 or 5 times until it's completed. Again, there's nothing wrong with doing that a couple of times, but there's so many of these scattered throughout the city that they do just get boring after just 2 or 3 times. The final of these 3 styles of activities are the city events. As you make your way through the open world map, at various points on your radar will be a little red dot, and that will indicate that there is a city event near you to complete. And my advice to you if you are playing, don't miss them, just do all of them as they crop up. These can vary from fighting a few gang members to taking a civilian to the hospital, pretty much exactly the same as it was in Spider-Man 2. For story progression, you do need to do a few races and a few combat tours, but you'll need to do more city events than both of those combined. As well as these activities, there are also collectibles scattered throughout the map, and these could be iconic locations, comic book covers, so on and so forth. You do also need to have a certain number of these to progress the story, but these are so easy to find, and you can also collect these in the story missions, that you probably won't ever get stuck by not having enough. So that's the open world activities out of the way, but what does the story offer you in terms of gameplay? Well, to put it simply, the story consists of 2 different kinds of gameplay: chasing and boss fights. So let's get the worst of these out the way first, and that is the chase sections. Oh boy, there are so many of these throughout the story that just feel like they're there to drag the game out just a little bit longer. Essentially, you'll start the mission, there'll be a cool cutscene, you think, oh look, it's Electro, or oh look, it's the Beetle, and then you have to spend ages chasing them around the map until eventually you'll start a boss fight. Now, that sounds okay on paper, but some of these chases are just outright unfair. A lot of the characters that you chase either place traps or stop for a second to hit you, and either way it just feels quite unfair when you're playing. It essentially feels like these parts of the game were designed for the fact that you were going to have to play them over and over again just to drag the game out a little bit. There were 2 chase sequences in this game in particular that really rubbed me the wrong way, and that is the initial chase between Venom and Electro. Basically, Trask sets you to chase Electro so that you can test out the Venom suit, and honestly, it's just ridiculous the way this has been designed. Electro can just zip about, fly around very quickly, Venom has to jump from building to building, which means you have to do extreme precision platforming between building jumps, while still trying to keep up with Electro, with a mechanic that just isn't designed for precision platforming. On top of this, Electro will stop every now and then to let out a burst of electric that will throw Venom back, so you need to keep a safe distance from him. And when you're on ground level, that's okay, but there's moments where he climbs very tall buildings, and if you get even close on your climb, he will knock you back and launch you all the way back to the bottom, which will stop the mission and you'll have to restart. There's another couple of sections similar to this later on into the game. There's one section where Spidey has to chase the Beetle. That was irritating, but definitely not the worst. But the worst Spidey chase has to go to Spider-Man chasing Venom after he's kidnapped Silver Sable. Venom jumps around from building to building, as you know, and Spidey has to web swing below to try and keep up. But the issue with that is, you can't see where Venom is jumping, and the mini-map in the bottom left is so small it's hard to tell which way he's going to go. So again, you have to replay it several times and learn the route that Venom's going to go, so sometimes you have to actually go ahead of where he's going to jump to. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, that just feels like very lazy game design. If it was just once or maybe even twice, then I would just shut up and get over it. but like half the story missions just consist of chase sections. It's just kinda irritating. So thankfully the game isn't just entirely chase missions, because we also have a lot of boss fights. Whilst there are no bad boss fights in this game, a lot of them do feel quite similar, because it's just let the enemy do a couple of attacks, dodge, and then spam the attack button, rinse and repeat until the health bar goes down. But thankfully there are a couple of outliers to this rule. Whilst the Electro chase section was one of the most irritating things I've ever played in the game, the Electro boss fight was pretty cool. Spidey has been knocked out, so as Venom you have to face off against Electro in Times Square. But the issue is, every time you get Electro to a low enough health point to think you're gonna win, he then goes and charges himself up on one of the billboards. The game doesn't do the best job of telling you that you can destroy those billboards, so my fight with Electro did go on a little bit longer than I would have liked, but I thought this was a very cool concept, and liked the fact that you had to destroy some of the environment to stop Electro from charging himself up. The other boss fight that I thought was particularly interesting was another Venom fight, and that was with Carnage. Late on into the story, Peter gets injected with a symbiote and becomes Carnage, and now Venom has to face off against him. This fight is somewhat similar to the Electro fight, because Carnage will dip away and try and restore his own health. As well as this, the fight also takes place across multiple rooms in Trask's building, with Venom having to do quick time events to break through the doors to follow Carnage to stop him from healing himself. Yes, after a while it did get quite irritating because I couldn't do it quick enough, but the character is literally called Carnage, so the boss fight should be Chaotic Carnage. It also just meant that when I eventually beat him, the satisfaction levels I felt were very high. Outside of these, there are also boss fights with the Green Goblin, Wolverine, Beetle, Silver Sable a couple of times, and as Spider-Man you have to fight Venom a couple of times as well. But a lot of these fights pretty much boil down to what I already said: let them attack, dodge, spam the attack button, win. Nothing wrong with them whatsoever, they're all just very cut and paste. So enough about the gameplay side of things. How does Ultimate Spider-Man hold up in terms of its design? Well, visually, I think this game still looks great 20 years later. It has this very cool cel-shaded comic book style to it, and all of its cutscenes are told as if it was actually a live-action comic panel, and it looks really cool. The open world that you move about in also looks pretty good, all things considered, and overall, visually, I think this game is very nice. It's an art style that I think more comic book games should have, because they age so well, still looking great literal decades later. As well as having very impressive visuals, Ultimate Spider-Man also features full voice acting. And you best believe that voice acting is full of that 2000s comic book charm, while still making these characters feel very real.
Alright, no more screwing around. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right.
Spider-Man yaps a lot, Venom sounds terrifying, and Wolverine sounds miserable, exactly as they all should. Now, no good video game would be complete without a good score to go with it, and the Ultimate Spider-Man soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. Composed by Kevin Manthe, who would actually go on to compose the soundtrack for the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show as well, there's just truly some fantastic songs that really go with their boss fights here. Which means overall, in terms of design, I would say Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the best Spider-Man games we've ever had. I just don't think it's aged as well in the gameplay department. It's not all bad, don't get me wrong, but I found this game to be more frustrating than it should have been. So anyway, what was the reaction to Ultimate Spider-Man like? Well, the game currently holds a 77 out of 100 on Metacritic, with most critics saying something pretty similar to what I've said, with the visuals looking great, with it feeling like a comic book, but gameplay being a bit repetitive. The game holds a user score of 8.6 out of 10, which is pretty impressive. On top of pretty good reviews, the game would also go on to sell quite a lot of copies, with 1.5 million copies estimated to be sold. These figures are from VG Charts. For me, Ultimate Spider-Man was a bit of a mixed bag. There was some incredibly frustrating game design in here, but also a lot of charm at the same time. Being able to play as both Spider-Man and Venom is a lot of fun and adds a much needed spice up to the formula, as well as having a lot of cool comic book characters show up. but I just can't ignore some of the stupid game design in the main story as well. So for me, this game is like a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. If you were a fan of this game growing up, then completely fair enough, I can absolutely see why, but for me, it just wasn't the best. So those are my thoughts on Ultimate Spider-Man. What do you guys think of this game? Are you a fan of it? Have you played it? Are you gonna play it? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, then make sure you hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications of my future uploads. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.